Did you know there are more versions of Monopoly than there are atoms in the universe? Okay, obviously that was a lie. However, it's a fact that over 275 million copies of Monopoly have been sold, despite the fact it's one of the worst board games ever made.
Do you think he's fish? I'm on that 97 bass hit, where we did kick flips to the hottest hits.
Okay, I know this is a contentious topic. On one hand, you have people who grew up playing Monopoly with their friends and their family and absolutely love it. And on the other hand, you have people who are ideologically opposed to ever sitting down at a table to play Monopoly again. I've had this conversation a breathtaking number of times with friends, family, parents, and people I've cornered on the street. And I'm sick of explaining to people on online dating apps why Monopoly isn't that good of a game. Now you might be thinking, why don't you just stop talking about it so much? Well, shut up, Susan. Now, while I do understand that for many people, Monopoly is their favourite game, however, it's so riddled with poor game design and just plain unfun game mechanics, it's startling how it's managed to stay relevant in the social conscious for over 100 years. It's older than goddamn sliced bread. On Board Game Geek, pretty much the board game equivalent of IMDb, Monopoly is rated 4.4 out of 10. That's really bad. That's lower than the IMDb equivalent of Alvin and the Chipmunks 3, or about on par with 50 Shades of Grey or the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Another way of looking at it is, out of the 21,778 board games listed on Board Game Geek, Monopoly is 21,771st. Monopoly is the 8th lowest board game ever designed. 1902, a woman named Lizzie Maggie, not that one, this one, designed the first iteration of what is now known as Monopoly, called the Landlord's Game. Lizzie was an outspoken anti-capitalist feminist and social rights activist who fucking hated market monopolies. And I know what you're thinking. Is she single? No, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. She hated Monopoly. Why did she make the Monopoly? Well, her iteration of the Landlord's Game was designed in part as a critique on capitalism and to demonstrate the negative effects of land monopolization. Lizzie patented the game in 1904, and for the next 20 years the game gained popularity as both a teaching tool in universities and as a family board game. Through a myriad of Chinese whispers and slight game modifications, the game reached this guy, Charles Darrow, and his son. A few years later, Charles and his son sold the game and its rights to Parker Bros., who owned the game up until their acquisition by Hasbro. What's interesting to note is, following the sale of the rights of the game from Darrow to the Parker brothers, Lizzie's involvement with the game was all but forgotten. Lizzie's involvement was only re-remembered in 1974 during a legal battle between Parker Bros. And the designers of Anti-Monopoly, a parody version of Monopoly. During this legal battle, the designers of Anti-Monopoly uncovered Lizzie's original 1904 patent. It's understood that Maggie earned a total of $500 from her design of the original iteration of Monopoly, a game which has gone on to sell 275 million copies. Okay, that's an abridged version of Monopoly's history. It's interesting, but it's not really justification enough to actually hate the game. Well, let's jump into my first issue with the game. In Monopoly, you have the agency of a blind man in a maze. The extent of decisions and impact you have on the board state or your interactions with other players is pitiful. Of course, I'm exaggerating, kind of, but in Monopoly, difficult choices are few and far between, especially for a game of its length. Should I buy this property? Yes. Should I buy this hotel? Yes. Should I... Other choices do you actually make in Monopoly? I literally have nothing else on my script. By far, Monopoly's most interesting decisions come from the auction and the trade mechanic. However, given you actually only get to interact with these mechanics 5 or 10 times, there really isn't enough meat there to justify such a long game. The only other interesting choice that takes place in this game is which token to pick at the start. It's the thumbtack. Interesting choices that could have been made in this game have been absorbed into the mechanics of the game itself. Where should I go? Let the dice decide. What card should I pick? Let the deck decide. What strategy should I pick? There's only one. Get as many properties as you can. Now I know that there's an argument as to which properties are the best. It's orange. There's really not enough ability to trade or pick your trade options that allow for emergent strategies. One of the biggest counter-arguments I receive from Monopoly apologists when I state my slight distaste for Monopoly is the fun take-that mechanic Monopoly has. First of all, you're wrong. I can think of 100 games that have better take-that mechanics than Monopoly. Second of all, Monopoly's take-that mechanic is barely a mechanic. Because of the lack of agency players have in determining any board state or the position of any player token, and due to the startlingly low chances you have, every time a player is bested by you, it's a farce. You've played barely any part in beating that player. That game has done it all to themselves. Monopoly's well-known epic and memorable frustrations against other players are barely ever due to the designs of another player. They're 90% determined by dice rolls, card draws, and bad luck. Monopoly's take-that mechanic doesn't have you losing to another player. It doesn't have you beating another player. It has you losing to the game itself, which isn't fun, it's just frustrating. My time's important. As a man who only goes to the bathroom when their bread is toasting, I can tell you that Monopoly is far, far too long. Now, I like long games. I've played some games that go for 6 hours, but every single one of these games has something that Monopoly doesn't. Choice. And I know I'm trying to keep these issues separate, but they're entwined and it's hard. Monopoly's a long game, especially if you play it with any of the house rules that do nothing but add time to the game. Even following the rules properly, the game takes about 1.5 to 2 hours for 4 people, and given the amount of choice you have, not much, that's far too long. In addition to that, the game has terrible pacing. All the action happens at the start. After 2 or 3 trips around the board, 20 to 30 minutes, all the properties have been bought and it's obvious who's going to win. After that big initial buyout, you can determine who's going to win with probably a 90% accuracy. That's not fun for 3 out of the 4 people who aren't going to win. I mean this honestly, and I've probably ended up in front of a Monopoly game 5 times in the last 5 years. I genuinely cannot remember the last time I finished a game of Monopoly, because every time after the dust has settled and the properties have been bought and the trades have been negotiated, people remember how boring the game is. There's nothing to it after those first 30 minutes. I genuinely think that Monopoly works better as a sociological analysis on Stockholm Syndrome than as an actual board game. This is a short one. It's probably also the most obvious one. Games with player elimination aren't that fun once you've been eliminated. It's not fun to be excluded? What do you want me to say? It's not fun. But in all my motives, there is one reason above all else for why I hate Monopoly. It's also the main reason I made this video. Monopoly has tainted every connotation there is for board games, making it way harder than it should be to get new people into the hobby. Imagine you're trying to convince someone to watch a movie, but they're not willing to try any new movie because they watched the Super Mario Bros. Movie as a kid and now they're convinced all movies are of their caliber. Or you talk about video games and everyone thinks all you do is play the 1984 original version of E.T. Monopoly has remained the poster child for a form of media that far exceeded it 50 years ago. The bar for board games has been set so low that even if I'm able to convince someone that not all games are as bad as Monopoly, they're not willing to accept that board games can be anything better than horrendous. Now there's something significant I haven't yet addressed in this video. Some people's favorite game is Monopoly, and that's fine. But if you are one of those people, I want you to honestly answer if you've played any game designed after the 1950s. Because while I can understand Monopoly being your favorite game if this is your only competition, I genuinely don't understand how you can hold that position if you've played any of these. Look, people play board games for a wide range of reasons. Whether it's to facilitate social interaction, to see a mate, to solve a fun problem, to interact with unique decision space, or any of the above. However, I cannot think of one of these categories in which Monopoly excels at. I can't even think of one where it's even remotely comparable to a modern board game. I know a lot of people who have had great experiences with Monopoly, and honestly, I did too when I was younger. I loved sitting around a table and playing with my friends and my family. However, I've come to realise that wasn't me enjoying playing Monopoly. That was me enjoying spending time with people I care about. That's where the enjoyment comes from. And while the vehicle we used to have that enjoyment was Monopoly, it's not a very good vehicle. It's maybe the three-wheeled blue car that Mr. Bean knocks over every episode. The fact is, if we were playing any other game during that time, we would have almost certainly had a far better time for the reasons that I've already explained. Now, my argument is, if I could play a better game with you, or if I could show you a better game, I should be able to convince you how bad truly Monopoly is. Well, if you like trading and the negotiating aspect of Monopoly, play Settlers of Catan, the notorious gateway game for modern board games. Or try Chinatown, literally all the good parts of Monopoly with none of the bad parts. Or try Lords of Vegas. If you're competitive and you love the take that mechanics in games, try Smash Up, Survive, Escape from Atlantis, or any social deduction game ever designed. If you just want to have a flat out good time and you're not sure what options there are, try a medium length, medium weight, highly rated board game on Board Game Geek like Lords of Waterdeep, or any highly rated cooperative game, or any highly rated party game. There's so many options. Special mention to these next few just to show you how fucking far board games have come. Mansions of Madness, you get to explore a whole haunted house while an app does all of the upkeep. Captain Sonar, 4v4 fucking battleships with each player taking on a specific role to try and take down the enemy sub. What the fuck? Legacy games which change after every single game with new rules and new mechanics being added. That's cool as. Or even something like Dice Forge where you roll a dice, you get resources, then you rip off faces of the die to upgrade your dice. That's crazy. Look, obviously these are select examples. However, it is insane the amount of creativity and interesting design choices that have gone into these games. Please try one.
Baby, what can I do?
In conclusion, Monopoly has nothing going for it outside of the fact that it's nostalgic, or maybe fulfilling the millennial dream of one day owning a property. Monopoly is popular because it's popular. It's been the board gaming zeitgeist for the last 100 years because of the best efforts of Hasbro and Parker Bros to make this game live far longer than it should have. I must admit, licensing 1 million different copies of the game so people can own their own football team, Disney character and sex toy is brilliant. It's fun, it's cool, it's exciting, but that doesn't make it a good game. It's a novelty at best. I'll also admit that because of the lack of actual mechanics, it's pretty easy to learn. However, it's no easier than a number of the games I've already shown. I think my smoking gun to demonstrate how unfun and how poorly designed Monopoly is as follows. Everyone knows there's this point in Monopoly, maybe an hour and maybe 3, where the game board has become a minefield of houses and hotels, and the best place to be is in jail. Skipping your turn and even avoiding paying the nominal fee that's required to get yourself out early. What this means is, the game has been designed so poorly that the optimal strategy to play it at points is to not play. That's bad. Monopoly has some unfixable issues. However, it's also got some fixable ones. While researching for this video, I found out the only iteration of Monopoly within the top 5,000 games of all time from the previous 21,000 is Game of Monopoly. Now, first of all, don't ever use the game word, it's cringe. But after looking into it, this game fixes a lot of my major issues with the standard Monopoly format. There's agency to how you move, with 2 types of dice that can be activated in any order and give you special bonuses. Player elimination has been completely removed, and rules modification and a new mechanic allows for boss battles, which limit the game to 30 to 45 minutes. Now, I've never played this game before, but comparatively speaking, that sounds pretty good. At the end of the day, I'm not trying to convince you Monopoly is bad. I guess I am. I'm just trying to convince you other options exist. Don't write off board gaming if you played Monopoly as a kid and never got back into it. And if you do like Monopoly, that's fine, but maybe try out some other board games. I promise you'll probably find something that you love.